Thanks very much. Really appreciate that. Alex Steele here alongside Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Intelligence Radio. We bring you all the top news in business, economics, and finance through our lens of our Bloomberg Intelligence folks. They cover 2,000 companies in 130 industries all around the world. Let's check in with one of them right now with Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst. Yeah, shocker, there's a debate tonight in case no one's been paying attention. Starts at 9 p.m. We'll have special coverage here at 8 p.m. simulcast on radio as well as television. Nathan, though, from an equity side, is there a Harris or Trump trade evolving at all that we can sort of zone in on?
No, I don't think exactly. I mean, anytime you talk Trump trade or Harris trade, we really just, there are certain sectors you can say will impact in certain ways to the presidency. But I think for tonight's purposes, we really want to hear more about tax plans. We want to hear more about economic plans because, both candidates have been fairly light, over the past couple of weeks in terms of saying how they're going to actually change certain things. Now, obviously, for tonight's debate, we've heard President Trump say that he wants to cut the corporate tax rate down to 15%. Kamala Harris, the vice president, wants to go up to 28%. But we would always just caution our clients and investors and so forth like that. Just remember, every statement that comes out of the candidate's mouth, you have to remember how they're going to get that through Congress or how they're going to get that through Washington. And for a lot of these tax proposals that you're going to hear tonight, the other folks down on the other side of, Pennsylvania Avenue, the Congress, they may have different plans. So it's just interesting to, hear those thoughts. But, most likely than not, they're going to have to be curtailed or restricted some.
Should a question be asked tonight of both candidates? Talk to us about annual deficits. Talk to us about the total debt of the United States. Should that be a question?
I think it should be. I mean, this is something that we get from New York a lot, especially from, asset managers that are concerned with the state of the U.S. debt. But from the Washington perspective, the U.S. debt is not something that many people have thought about, or at least if they are thinking about it, it's certainly not reflective in what Congress spending goals are. So, I think when it comes to the debt, though, however, it's really going to be whoever wins the election, because if Kamala Harris wins the election, you're going to have a return of the debt ceiling fights that we saw under the first half or the end of the Obama administration, where, debt ceiling comes up, it's going to be negotiated, and then ultimately when the markets begin to react to it, they kick the can down the road. Now, the debt ceiling doesn't expire until January 1st, 2025, which is good news because the lame duck, and it will probably be one of President Biden's last signature as president to kick the can down even more. But if President Trump wins, I don't think you're going to see many of this debt ceiling fights at all.
What about some of the sectors, the key sectors that are kind of most exposed here?
Yeah, so, we just put out a large report on the Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump race. And some of our key sectors to watch were like renewables, tied to the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot of tax carrots, if you will, in there that are spurring renewable investment, especially in CapEx in a lot of GOP states. Others involve the banks, the Basel III endgame, a proposal that would increase capital requirements around 9% for the investment banks. If President Trump wins, that may not go forward. Other things are global manufacturers due to the tax changes that we just talked about. Healthcare, there are $25 billion in Obamacare subsidies that are up for renewal next year. And finally, big tech. If Kamala Harris wins, you're going to have a continuation of the very stringent M&A antitrust authority that the Biden-era regulators are putting on big tech. But if J.D. Vance's idea of economic populism gets into the White House, you can see a Republican president also be very skeptical of big tech. So a lot of what ifs, but a lot of, scenarios in which those industries could be heavily impacted.
I listened to former President Trump's economic plan at the Economic Club of New York. I don't know. I had a hard time making heads or tails out of it, but I guess it was lower taxes, higher tariffs. Is that kind of the basis of his economic, platform?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to point out, because I think it's almost like a phase one, phase two type of deal if President Trump wins. Phase one is tariffs. This is something that he can do. The power of the presidency is a lot more powerful there. And so, the first half of 2025, you could see a lot more tariffs coming in. Now, I would argue that a lot of these tariffs are negotiation ploys. If he holds up an executive order and says, I'm going to sign a tariff, there's probably language in that executive order saying 270 days from now, it won't go into fruition until then, because you're going to give the opposite side multiple times to negotiate. But it's certainly something that he's comfortable with, and I think, would easily put out if he feels that it's necessary. But then the tax reform debate is what's going to come next, because at the end of 2025, those Trump-era tax cuts for individuals expire. Now, President Trump has said 15% corporate tax rate. I'm not sure he'll be able to get that. He's going to have to negotiate. We've seen a little bit of statements from House Republicans saying, yeah, maybe we should go down to 20 or 19 or 18%, but being able to pay for that 15% is going to be somewhat difficult for these deficit hawks. So, but there's a lot of provisions of the Trump-era tax cuts that have already expired for industry, and I think President Trump is going to try and institute those. So at a large level, think Trump 2.0 is going to do another version of the same tax cut.
I literally remember having the exact same conversation in 2015, 2016, like the phase 2, how you get it done, etc. So what's interesting to me, though, is the lack of response, though, in, say, high tax companies versus low tax companies, like the things that would make sense because those policies are so different, say on corporate taxes. Are we seeing that reflected within market moves?
I think so, but I've been talking to a lot of investors over the last few weeks, and a lot of folks come to me and they say, we just really don't know what's going to happen on tax until we know the makeup of Congress. And the reason being is that if President Trump wins, but the Democrats take the House, pretty much all of his tax vision, if you will, is going to be curtailed, negotiated, and a lot more restricted. Now, if he ends up winning the House and the Senate, they can use reconciliation to essentially bypass the Democrats, and they have a very broad net that they can cast. So a lot of people that I've been talking to have saying, look, we understand the Trump-era desires, and we understand that these broad deficit-inducing tax cuts potentially could be on the horizon, but we're not excited about it just yet because we need to see how the House and Senate races play out.
What is the thinking currently in Washington, Nathan, about how that will play out in Congress?
Well, look, I mean, if you go to the function on the terminal WSL election, you can see all the data there. But I think, when it comes to the Senate, that's going to be somewhat very difficult for the Democrats to control because right now it's 51-49. You're going to lose West Virginia because Senator Joe Manchin is retiring. So now you're at a 50-50, and the Democrats essentially have to run the board just to keep that 50-50. Think of Senator Sherrod Brown in Ohio, Senator John Tester in Montana, Senator Jackie Rose in Nevada. So assuming that if the Democrats lose one, the Republicans are most likely going to take the Senate. And if President Trump wins, then obviously allow him the ability to put in judges in his regulatory leadership. When it comes to the House, I've seen polling on both sides, but my general view, and this is just my personal view, is that whoever wins the president also wins the House.
Oh, okay, interesting. How excited are you for tonight? Is this like a Super Bowl for you? Like, do you get popcorn? Do you have like guac? Do you have avocados? There's an avocado debate happening right now on radio and TV.
I think I'm going to try and take as much Bloomberg popcorn away from the pantry I can home with me tonight. So
nice.
It's going to be a fun night.
That was awesome. All right. Hey, Nathan, we really appreciate Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence, senior policy analyst, and the most recent deep dive on the impact of the U.S. election. It's one of those things. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like I want to cringe, but watch it. It's like you want to watch it through your hands, like a scary movie or something, because you just don't know like what's going to erupt and what's going to happen.
Yeah, and again, as Nathan was just pointing out, this research report, which you can get at BI Go, is just really in depth. Basically, just saying from an economic Wall Street financial perspective, under 2 different presidencies, which industries are winners and losers. So it's great research. BI Go on the terminal.